Sometimes, the quietest whispers carry the loudest warnings. The room smelled faintly of ozone and recycled air, like the remnants of a storm that had passed hours ago but refused to leave. Elon sat in the corner, shoulders hunched, fingers drumming an erratic rhythm against the cold steel of his desk. He stared at the hollow screen before him, the text blinking in a cadence that almost felt alive. Something wasn't right. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, a stubborn echo that refused to sync with the soft hum of the ventilation system. Outside, rain traced pale streaks down the window, catching the neon reflections of the city's restless heart. Each droplet seemed to carry a secret, sliding down with deliberate care, like a message he wasn't yet ready to understand. A single metallic click from the floor beneath him, almost imperceptible, made him shift. Someone was moving. Or something was. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered to himself, voice barely above a whisper. But the words didn't soothe him. They fanned the unease into a small, but persistent flame. His mind raced through half-formed memories of late nights, closed doors, cryptic messages he'd received over the past month. He had brushed them off. Until now, on the holoscreen, an encrypted message pulsed. CIA. 3 letters, simple, sharp, unrelenting. He had heard the rumors, of course the whispers in the tech corridors, the quiet murmurs in venture meetings, but he had never expected a direct line, blinking patiently, almost mockingly at him. The cursor pulsed, and he felt the air thicken, each beat of the neon light slicing shadows across his face. A sudden gust rattled the window, scattering papers to the floor. Elon's fingers froze mid-tap. Somewhere in the building, a low mechanical hum had begun, rhythmic yet unpredictable, a cadence that did not belong to any machine he knew. He pressed his ear to the desk. Nothing. And yet, the sound lingered, insidious, climbing up his spine like liquid ice. The message on the screen changed, words he could barely comprehend, flashing and then dissolving. "They are closer than you think." He swallowed hard. The words weren't a threat, they were an accusation. A reminder of invisible eyes tracking invisible movements. His chest tightened. His mind played tricks, filling every corner with shadows of unmade decisions and what-ifs he had never dared to confront. Then a soft click, sharper than the rest. Footsteps, or the illusion of them, passed behind the partition. Elon's breath hitched. Hitched as heaven. Elon's breath hitched as heaven. He had always known that power came with noise, that genius left trails, but he had never felt it so close. So human, or at least convincingly human. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. The office lights flickered, once, twice, and then settled. But the shadows had shifted, elongating unnaturally along the walls. A subtle hum now threaded beneath the ventilation, harmonizing with the distant pulse of the city. Every sound was layered, deliberate, rain against the glass, metal beneath his palms, a faint electrical squeal from the server towers behind him, and something else, something he could not yet name. "Why now?" he whispered. It wasn't just curiosity, it was dread mixed with the thrill of being hunted. The CIA was not an institution that made mistakes, and yet here they were, intruding into the most private corners of his mind, blurring lines between paranoia and reality. He felt the familiar tug of obsession, the magnetic pull that had driven him through countless sleepless nights, but now it was tainted with fear. The holoscreen shifted again, faster this time, displaying a series of coordinates and timestamps like breadcrumbs across a map only he could see. A small chime marked each update, each note an almost musical warning. Elon's fingers itched to respond, to type, to signal. But something held him back. Instinct. Or perhaps a memory he could not place, something about the last time he had been this close to invisible eyes. The faint sound of a breathing pattern, uneven, echoed from the far side of the room. He froze, straining. Each breath seemed deliberate, carefully controlled, as though it were designed to be noticed without revealing its source. Elon had always been attuned to subtle patterns, the faint tremor in a colleague's voice, a misaligned sensor in a prototype, but this was different. This was designed. His gaze fell on a small metallic object on the desk. Almost mundane, a paperclip twisted into a shape vaguely resembling a key. He hadn't noticed it before. It hummed softly, resonating with the pulsing lights of the room, as if aware of his attention. He picked it up. The metal was colder than reality should allow, heavier than its form suggested. A minor foreshadowing, trivial to most, but to him, a warning. The CIA didn't leave nothing behind. Elon, they're everywhere. A whisper seemed to drift from the walls, not quite his own voice. He jumped, heart hammering, pulse racing in a strange sync with the blinking cursor. He wasn't alone, but he was. It was a paradox, a riddle folded into the silence. He pressed his hands against his ears, but the echo remained, a ghost of sound that taunted as much as it informed. The storm outside intensified. Rain lashed the glass with a sharp insistence, punctuated by distant rumbles that shook the window frames. Neon light flickered in response, casting distorted shadows across his features. Every surface, every object seemed alive with possibility, charged with the tension of secrets waiting to erupt. Elon's mind conjured images, figures in the periphery, mechanical limbs that didn't belong to anyone, eyes that observed without ever blinking. Then the hollow screen pulsed again. Words he couldn't ignore. Trust is a liability. Elon's stomach sank. He knew the principle well, had preached it, lived it. But the message was not advice, it was a verdict. Elon's stomach, sing, weakened self. Elon's stomach sank. He could feel it crawling over him, subtle and invasive. Each letter, each pulse, carried weight, bending perception. He realized the storm outside mirrored the storm inside. Chaotic, relentless, impossible to ignore. He rose slowly, moving toward the window. Rain-streaked glass distorted the city below, casting reflections that seemed almost sentient, like faces that shouldn't exist in that particular neon glow. Each step was accompanied by micro-sounds, the scrape of a shoe against metal, the faint buzz of electricity, the soft sigh of air conditioning shifting. Each layer of sound added to the tapestry, guiding his intuition, warning him. The city felt different tonight, alive in ways that were usually invisible. Observant, patient, deliberate. Elon felt himself part of a vast experiment, a pawn in a game he had not signed up for, and yet there was exhilaration in the realization. He had always thrived on edges, on the brink, on the unseen. But tonight, the edge was alive, breathing alongside him. A distant movement in the shadows, precise yet untraceable, reminded him he was not alone. Somewhere, someone or several someones tracked him, and he knew the rules had changed. The subtle click of a hinge, the almost inaudible scrape of metal, a faint, mechanical whir, each layered sound painted a scene he couldn't see but could feel, the presence of orchestrated antagonists moving in and out of reality. He took a deep breath, letting it fill his chest, steadying the internal rhythm against the rising chaos. Memories flickered. Childhood nights, staring at the sky, imagining a future where limits were optional, rules were suggestions, and fear was fuel. Now, those same nights felt prophetic, as though the universe had been preparing him for this collision. Tech, secrecy, power, and the invisible hands that guided both. And then, an internal realization. Sharp and cutting, he understood the personal cost. Knowledge had a price. Trust was a currency he could no longer afford. And every decision would echo in ways unseen but deeply felt. The CIA, the neon storm, the metallic object in his hand, all threads in a web he hadn't realized he'd entered. But there was no turning back. Not anymore. A subtle shift in the light caught his eye. Something moved, too fast to follow consciously, but slow enough to register as an anomaly. His pulse synchronized with the brief flicker, an involuntary connection to the invisible rhythm of the hunt. He recognized it. Micro-foreshadowing, the kind that hinted at revelation and danger simultaneously. The room exhaled with him, a living environment, responding, reacting. He returned to the desk, the metal object now a talisman of attention. Fingers hovered over the hollow keyboard. Each potential action felt like detonating a chain reaction, each movement a gamble against unseen algorithms and human predators alike. The rain outside softened, almost respectfully, as though aware of the focus inside. Or perhaps the storm waited, patient, for the right moment to strike. Sometimes, the smallest things reveal the largest truths, he murmured, a line that wasn't just self-reflection but a mantra, a philosophy he'd held for years. He tapped a sequence on the hollow screen. careful, deliberate. Each keystroke was a conversation, each pause a negotiation with the shadows around him. The metallic paperclip trembled slightly in his hand, a resonance perfectly timed with the faintest mechanical whir from the far wall. Elon paused. The hum was not random, it had purpose, intelligence, malice, observation, and then, just as suddenly as it began, the room fell silent. Rain softened, neon light stabilized, shadows returned to normal proportions, but Elon knew it was temporary. A warning, a prelude, a promise. He felt it deep in his chest. The storm wasn't done yet. The invisible eyes hadn't blinked, and the game, whatever game had begun, was only just starting. The quietest movements often hide the deadliest intentions. Elon moved through the empty corridors of his private lab, the faint hum of machinery, a constant, almost comforting companion. Each step echoed against steel walls, carrying the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. He knew the city outside thrummed with life. Yet in here, time felt suspended, every second stretched into a deliberate act of observation. A faint scent of burnt ozone lingered, subtle, almost sweet, but wrong. It reminded him of one of those experiments gone awry, the kind that left invisible scars on memory long after the machines cooled. He paused at a junction, eyes narrowing as the soft click of a hinge drifted from somewhere deeper within the facility. Not human, not yet. It had rhythm, and intelligence behind its timing. The hollow screen in his palm pulsed, almost impatiently, alerting him to a new message. CIA. Again. His pulse quickened. He hesitated before opening it, a brief, subconscious negotiation with fate. The words were minimal, sparse, but they carried a weight that no explanation could mitigate. You are closer than you realize. Watch the ones who watch you. Elon's lips pressed into a thin line. That phrasing was deliberate, a riddle with an answer that could break him or set him free. His mind raced through every interaction, every shadow in the room, every half-seen reflection in the lab's polished surfaces. He could feel the weight of invisible observers pressing against his perception, layering suspicion over certainty until reality itself seemed suspect. He passed a console bank, each monitor displaying fragmented streams of data, some encrypted, some partially corrupted. The soft buzz of the screens, combined with the occasional mechanical whir of cooling fans, created a rhythm almost musical in its precision. Yet, beneath it, a subtle discord ran, a motif of danger, barely perceptible, but deeply unnerving. It was as if the environment itself whispered warnings, and Elon had learned to listen. A drawer creaked. Not fully open, not fully closed, just enough to suggest presence. Elon froze. He could feel the tension in his chest, like steel coiling under pressure. Slowly, he crouched, scanning the floor with a precision born of instinct. Shadows pooled in the corners, elongated by the flickering neon overhead, and then he saw a reflection that didn't belong. Someone, or something, mirrored his movements before he had moved. The thought struck him like a jolt. They were inside. Somehow, somewhere, watching. The CIA didn't make mistakes, yet here they were, leaving breadcrumbs of observation, a calculated dance of fear and provocation. Elon's fingers itched toward a hidden compartment in his sleeve, an instinctive preparation for confrontation. A whisper floated across the room, almost inaudible, yet precise. Not everything is as it seems. Elon's breath caught. The voice wasn't coming from a speaker, not from any conventional source. It was embedded in the atmosphere itself, subtle distortions in sound that tricked perception. He had engineered simulations that produced this effect before, but never in his lab without his intervention. Rain lashed against the exterior windows, a drumbeat that underscored the tension inside. Each drop struck like a metronome for the unseen observers, a rhythmic confirmation of his isolation. Elon moved toward the observation deck, every step measured, aware that even the slightest noise could betray his presence or intent. Through the glass, the city sprawled beneath him, glowing neon and rain-slicked streets, unaware of the invisible chessboard being played above. He felt the familiar thrill of knowledge and power, mingled now with fear. The CIA didn't just watch, they orchestrated, manipulated, and if necessary, eliminated. His mind catalogued possibilities, tracing lines between past encounters. corporate secrets, and the shadows that lingered too long in his peripheral vision. A soft metallic ping drew his attention to the desk behind him. The small paperclip, twisted into a key shape, had moved slightly, as if nudged by some invisible force. Elon picked it up, its cold weight pressed into his palm like a reminder. Even the smallest things carried significance. This wasn't paranoia, it was observation, pattern recognition, survival. Then the hum shifted. Not the usual machinery, not the ventilation. Something alive, deliberate, moving in and out of the rhythm of the lab. He listened, calibrating his perception to the microbeats. The faint scuff of shoes on metal, the subtle mechanical clicks that hinted at motion without form. Multiple presences, layered, coordinated. The CIA had a signature, and he could hear it in the precision of their intrusion. His hollow screen blinked again. Another message, coordinates. Only this time, the notation was accompanied by a brief video clip. Grainy, almost subliminal, it showed a figure in a distant facility, shadowed, faceless, but unmistakably observing a console identical to his own. The alignment was precise, deliberate, a mirrored environment. Someone had been preparing this, rehearsing it, waiting for him to notice. Elon's chest tightened. He realized he was not just being watched, he was being predicted. Every move he made, every hesitation catalogued. The CIA had calculated probabilities, anticipated reactions, orchestrated outcomes before he even became aware of them. Knowledge was a weapon, and they wielded it without mercy. A subtle vibration under his foot drew his attention. Tiny, almost imperceptible, like a subsonic reminder that the floor itself was part of the game. His mind raced, reconstructing scenarios, calculating escape vectors, anticipating patterns in the surveillance he could not see. Each microbeat in the environment was a thread in a web, and Elon had only begun to trace its design. He stepped back from the glass, chest still tight, mind alive with permutations. His reflection stared at him, eyes narrowed, jaw set. He had always relied on intellect, foresight, and engineering brilliance. But tonight, he realized that survival required more than that. It required anticipation of the unseen, recognition of subtle cues, and the courage to act before the trap fully closed. A soft whisper drifted again, this time more insistent. Choose carefully. They learn fast. Elon's fingers brushed the hollow screen, initiating a calculated sequence. He didn't know what awaited on the other end, but action decisive, deliberate was the only variable he could control. The paperclip, still warm in his hand, felt like an anchor, a talisman against the unknown. Suddenly, a flash of light from an adjoining lab illuminated a figure brief, almost imperceptible, vanishing before recognition. Elon froze. The cadence of the hum shifted again. Mechanical, organic, deliberate. He realized the stakes had escalated. Not observation alone, but interaction. The CIA's presence was not passive. They were learning, adapting, responding in real time. He moved toward the console, fingers dancing across the holographic keyboard. Data flowed, encrypted algorithms parsing themselves into readable patterns. Predictive models he had once used for spacecraft navigation now repurposed to anticipate human intent. Every line of code, every micro-decision, felt like a negotiation with an invisible adversary. Then, a subtle vibration at his wrist alerted him. A secondary device, a notification. Another message, almost playful in tone. Do you see the pattern yet? Uavaran. Elon exhaled slowly, the tiniest smile tugging at the corner of his lips. It was a game, calculated, dangerous, but a game nonetheless. And games, he knew, could be won. The storm outside softened, a deceptive lull. Rain still pattered, neon reflections still danced. But the environment inside pulsed with a new rhythm. Elon adjusted his posture, senses sharpened, mind fully alert. He understood one thing with crystalline clarity. The CIA wasn't just watching, they were challenging him, testing him, mapping his responses to understand the unpredictable variable he embodied. And he would respond. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with precision, intellect, and the quiet audacity of someone who had built rockets to defy gravity and companies to defy convention. Every whisper, every shadow, every microbeat of sound was a clue, a weapon, a mirror of strategy. and Elon intended to use it all. The lab settled into tense silence, only the hum of machines and the distant rhythm of rain marking the passage of time. Yet beneath it, subtle anomalies persisted. A shadow that lingered too long, a reflection slightly misaligned, a whisper barely audible. The CIA's game was ongoing, dynamic, relentless. Elon tapped the final sequence into the console. Data streamed outward, encrypted, coded, impossible to intercept without knowledge he alone possessed. And as he watched the readout, he felt the thrill of engagement, the fear of exposure, and the exhilaration of the hunt intertwining in a single, sharp clarity. He looked out the window, neon rain-streaked streets sprawling endlessly below. Somewhere, unseen, his observers adapted, learned, reacted. The game had begun, the rules invisible, the stakes unspoken. But one thing was clear, neither the storm outside nor the storm inside would relent, and Elon, poised between observation and action, was ready to meet it head-on. Danger hides in plain sight, waiting for hesitation to claim its prey. Elon's fingers hovered over the hollow screen, the glow reflecting off his eyes like twin beacons in the dim room. Every pulse of light felt like a heartbeat, synchronized with the subtle rhythm of the facility itself. Somewhere beyond the walls, invisible eyes tracked each micro-movement, every twitch of a muscle, cataloging reactions with ruthless precision. The storm outside had grown, rain slamming against the building with jagged insistence, punctuating the night with drum-like intensity. Thunder rolled overhead, distant yet vibrating through the metal structure, and Elon could feel it in his bones, a prelude, an echo of the chaos that awaited. The storm was not merely outside, it had embedded itself into the air, the hum of machines, the tension in his own chest. A soft, metallic tick broke the ambient rhythm. Elon froze. It came from the floor beneath him, a single, deliberate movement, almost imperceptible. The kind of sound only an observer would leave. A signature encoded in stealth, an unspoken message, "We are here." He crouched slightly, scanning the lab with precision. The shadows seemed to breathe, shifting in ways the lighting shouldn't allow. Neon reflections splintered across surfaces, forming distorted mirrors that suggested figures lurking just beyond perception. His mind cataloged each anomaly, each irregular pulse in sound, each microshift in light. This was more than surveillance. It was choreography. The CIA didn't just watch, they staged. Then came a whisper. Fragmented, fractured, carried in the low hum of electricity. Patterns reveal weakness. Elon's pulse quickened. It wasn't human, or if it was trained beyond normal perception. The voice threaded into the rhythm of the room, embedding itself like a subtle virus in his awareness. He glanced at the console. Data streamed in jagged waves, predictive models aligning with his own calculations, almost mocking him with precision. Someone had anticipated his algorithms, mirrored his thought processes, matched his instinctive moves. The realization struck him sharply. He was not playing the game, he was the piece being tested. The small metallic paperclip, still twisted into a key, trembled subtly in his palm. He didn't understand why it resonated, but he felt the warning inherent in it. A trigger, a motif, a message encoded in physical form. The smallest objects often carried the loudest truths. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, echoed somewhere beyond the walls, harmonizing with the mechanical whir that had threaded the facility since he arrived. The cadence was irregular, deliberately unpredictable, layered, multiple agents, human and technological. Each footfall, an unspoken dialogue between predator and prey. Elon's chest tightened. He understood now. The game had escalated. He moved toward the observation deck, careful to synchronize his steps with the ambient hum, blending with the microbeats of the environment. The rain outside blurred into streaks of light, neon distorted, creating an almost hallucinatory overlay on reality. Shadows twisted in alignment with the movement of the storm, forming phantom figures that seemed to converge and disperse with purpose. A sudden flicker of light revealed a figure across the room, brief, precise, vanishing before recognition. Elon's breath caught. It wasn't a shadow. It was deliberate, orchestrated. Someone was learning, adapting, responding in real time. The CIA wasn't merely watching, they were predicting, manipulating, pressuring him into decisions before he even realized he'd made them. He pressed his fingers into the hollow screen, initiating a sequence of defensive encryptions. Data streamed outward in complex layers, designed to mislead, obfuscate, and buy him time. Each line of code was an extension of his mind, a silent conversation with the invisible adversary. The room's hum responded, almost as if aware of the shifting strategies. A soft vibration under his feet signaled movement behind the consoles. Not one presence, but several, coordinated, communicating through sound, light, and shadow without revealing form. Elon understood the subtle cues now. The mechanical ticks, the shifting hum, the almost imperceptible micro-vibrations, all signatures, all markers. Each layer revealed the sophistication of the pursuit. A whisper, closer now, almost inside his own thoughts. Do you see how it unfolds? Elon's eyes narrowed. The phrase was a challenge, a puzzle threaded into the environment. He realized the CIA's tactics were psychological as much as physical. Designed to unsettle, to break rhythm, to test perception and instinct. He reached for the metallic object in his palm, weighing it like a talisman, and realized it was more than a key, it was a signal, a trigger for awareness. Subtle patterns, invisible cues, repeated microsignals that had been guiding him toward recognition. The storm outside and the storm inside aligned in tense synchronicity. He understood. He was being herded, analyzed, prepared for something greater. Then, a low, almost mechanical hum grew beneath the floor. Not steady, but pulsating, moving with intent. Elon stepped back, heart hammering. The sound wasn't random. It was anticipatory, a signal of approach, of escalation. The CIA's presence was no longer passive. They had crossed into intervention. He turned, eyes scanning the room with rapid precision. Neon reflections shattered across the lab surfaces, creating phantoms of movement that danced at the edge of vision. And then he saw it. A reflection in the polished steel of a console, delayed by milliseconds, showing a figure entering through a previously unnoticed access point. The realization struck him like lightning. He was now in the domain of active engagement. Observation had evolved into direct confrontation. His mind cataloged options, probabilities, risks, and contingencies with machine-like speed, the same clarity he once applied to launching rockets or coding autonomous systems. Survival demanded more than intellect, it demanded anticipation of the unseen. Another whisper, closer still, threaded into the hum. Choices have consequences. Elon inhaled sharply. Each word was designed to provoke, to test, to manipulate. His pulse raced in sync with the layered rhythms of sound, light, and mechanical signature around him. The environment itself had become an active participant in the psychological game. He activated a secondary holo display, overlaying predictive modeling atop the environmental cues. Shadows aligned with probable trajectories, hums calibrated to likelihoods of movement, and micro-vibrations analyzed for the hidden weight of unseen actors. Every layer converged, producing a map of inference so precise it bordered on clairvoyance. The storm outside softened briefly, a deceptive lull, as though acknowledging the intensity inside. Rain streaked across the windows, reflecting fractured neon light that created a hall of illusions, each one hinting at truth, danger, or misdirection. Elon's mind raced through potential scenarios, each more improbable and dangerous than the last. A sudden metallic click drew his attention. One figure moved closer, a shadow among shadows, deliberate, precise, unseen, yet undeniably present. Elon's hand moved instinctively, adjusting a concealed security measure. Each motion, each sequence, was a negotiation with unseen adversaries, a dialogue conducted in silence and strategy. Then came the final whisper, almost inside his thoughts, chilling in its intimacy. The storm isn't finished. And neither are we. Elon's jaw tightened. He understood completely. This was no longer about observation or testing. It was about escalation. Engagement. A game of shadows and sound, of perception versus anticipation, of intellect versus orchestration. And he would meet it. With precision, with strategy, with the quiet, unrelenting audacity that had carried him to the edge of the possible before. The storm outside resumed, fierce and unyielding, lightning slicing the sky with jagged clarity. Inside, the lab vibrated with the layered hum of machines, mechanical motifs, and hidden footsteps. The CIA's presence was palpable, a choreography of threat and observation, and Elon, grounded in the rhythm of microbeats and pattern recognition, prepared to step forward, to act, to engage the unseen in a contest where every move mattered and every second counted. Sometimes, the most dangerous moves are the ones no one sees coming. Elon paused at the threshold of his lab, the hum of machinery vibrating beneath his feet like a heartbeat he could almost synchronize with. Every shadow seemed to watch him, every light flicker a signal, every drop of rain against the reinforced windows a countdown. He knew now that the CIA's presence wasn't just external, it had seeped into the very architecture of perception, weaving itself into the rhythm of his reality. A faint metallic whisper from behind a console made him tense. Not just any sound, it was deliberate, almost musical. A signature of methodical calculation. He crouched, scanning the room for anomalies, his eyes darting across the neon reflections that splintered along the polished surfaces. In these fragments, he could see traces of intent, movement patterns that suggested observation, planning, adaptation. He exhaled slowly. Observation alone could be handled, predicted, but anticipation required countermeasures. He activated a concealed terminal beneath the console, fingers dancing across hollow keys with deliberate precision. Streams of data unfurled, encrypted and looping. Each algorithm a trap for those who might be tracking him. A counter-rhythm emerged from the software, subtle disruptions in network traces designed to mislead and fragment observation. The storm outside raged, rain pounding like percussion on the windows, lightning carving jagged veins of light through the darkened cityscape. Elon's senses synchronized with it, each beat of thunder mapping to a micro-action inside the lab. Shadows flickered unnaturally as he moved, stretching and contorting as though the room itself conspired to distract him. He didn't flinch. He had learned to read the cues hidden in sound and light the layers beneath the apparent reality. A soft click, almost imperceptible, sounded from the floor. Elon's eyes narrowed. Someone or multiple someones was moving closer. He adjusted his position, aligning with the microbeats of environmental sound, ventilation hums, mechanical whirs, and the subtle vibration of the reinforced flooring. Each element became a sensor, a tool, a message. He was no longer just the observed. He was beginning to influence the observation. The metallic paperclip, still twisted into the shape of a key, caught the flicker of neon light. Its subtle vibration resonated in his palm, as though alerting him to patterns invisible to casual perception. Elon's mind cataloged every micro-signal, the hums, clicks, reflections, and integrated them into a predictive model of movement. Each pulse, each beat, revealed more than the eye could see: positions, intentions, potential threats. Then came the whisper, soft but unmistakable. "You can't outpace what you can't see." Elon smirked, though the tension in his chest remained taut. That was exactly the point. He wasn't trying to outpace them. He was forcing them to react. Every algorithm he deployed, every distraction he planted, every microshift in environment altered the narrative of pursuit. The CIA thought they were shaping his moves, but he was reshaping the battlefield itself. A sudden flash of movement along the far wall made him pivot sharply. He saw nothing, yet the subtle change in light, the micro-distortion in shadow, confirmed it. Someone had moved through the periphery, testing him, probing. Elon pressed a sequence into the terminal, sending a stream of false data into surveillance logs, creating phantom trails for anyone watching. He could almost hear the tiny, frustrated clicks of recalculations from an unseen observer. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the room in stark, almost surgical clarity. Shadows leapt, twisted, and reformed. The storm seemed alive, echoing the tension inside. Elon's reflection danced across the polished steel, fractured into multiple overlapping selves. He studied the fragments, not just for confirmation of presence, but for insight into perception itself. Every crack of light and shadow was a lesson in anticipation, adaptation, and deception. Then, a vibration under his wrist. A notification from a secondary device, subtle enough to be mistaken for system lag, but precise. CIA. The message was cryptic, a single line blinking before disappearing. Patterns are converging. Watch closely. Elon's chest tightened, a mix of adrenaline and curiosity. Patterns converging implied an approaching climax. A decision point orchestrated by unseen hands. But he wasn't unprepared. He wasn't unprepared. In Saturn's 2, he had begun to turn the maze into a weapon, a living network of countermeasures, embedded in code, environment, and microbeats of perception. A soft metallic tick echoed again, closer this time. Elon pivoted, eyes scanning every reflective surface. Neon streaks fractured across monitors, consoles, and floors, revealing micro-movements previously invisible. He recognized the subtle cues now: distance, intent, adaptation. His adversaries were skilled, but he had the advantage of surprise, the element they hadn't yet anticipated. He moved to the observation deck, crouching low. Each step measured, synced to the rhythm of ambient sound, ventilation hum, mechanical whirs, faint vibrations from structural beams, and the persistent beat of rain. The layers formed a map in his mind, each anomaly a coordinate, each whisper a hint at unseen positions. He was beginning to map the hunters. Then came a faint whisper in the hum, almost inside his thoughts. "You are not alone." Elon's eyes darted. Not a warning, it was a taunt. A test. The CIA was attempting to manipulate him, create doubt, destabilize rhythm, but he remained calm. The whisper was part of the game, a predictable variable now incorporated into his model. Lightning struck again, illuminating a distant figure outside the lab window. Elon leaned forward, analyzing the reflection. The figure moved with intent, deliberate, shadowed, faceless. It was a subtle signal, almost cinematic in its precision. Someone had entered the arena, the stakes now no longer abstract. The storm, both external and internal, mirrored the escalation. He activated the secondary terminal. Streams of encrypted data cascaded, feeding decoy sequences into surveillance channels, creating microfractures in the predicted behavior of his observers. Every false trail was a probe, every distraction a trap. The CIA thought they had calculated probabilities. He was now bending them, introducing variables into their models. A sudden, almost imperceptible hum shifted in pitch. Elon froze, listening. Someone was adapting in real time, responding to his maneuvers. He smiled faintly. Good. This was the point where strategy became art, where intellect danced with risk, and the environment itself became a tool. The paperclip in his palm vibrated again, subtly, as if confirming alignment with unseen movements. He realized it wasn't just a talisman, it was a key to awareness, a microsensor connecting him to the rhythms of intrusion, threat, and anticipation. Then, a whisper, fragmented, carried in the mechanical hum. Every choice echoes. Choose carefully. Waltzian. Elon exhaled slowly. Each word, each microbeat, each environmental cue had become a part of a complex equation. The CIA had escalated the engagement. He had escalated the countermeasures. The storm outside raged on, rain lashing, thunder tearing across the sky, but inside, he felt clarity. The battlefield was invisible, the players unseen, but the rules, subtle, precise, manipulable, were now partially his own. He looked at the fractured neon reflections, shadows of shadows, multiple overlapping versions of the same space. Each reflected line, each micro-distortion, was a potential clue, a tactical advantage. He realized that the storm, the whispers, the hum, the paperclip, the rain, all were elements in a multi-layered narrative he could read, interpret, and manipulate. And Elon knew this. The game had only just begun. The storm wasn't finished. The CIA's presence was relentless, but for the first time, he felt not just pursued, but capable, ready to shape the chase, influence the unseen, and turn the invisible battlefield into a canvas of strategic brilliance. The storm outside intensified again, rain slashing, wind gusting, lightning splitting the sky. Inside, the lab vibrated with layered hums, clicks, whispers, and shadows. Elon's breath synchronized with the rhythm, a metronome of focus. The game had entered its next phase, and he was prepared to meet it, fully, decisively. and without hesitation. Sometimes, clarity comes only when the walls themselves are listening. Elon's breath caught as he stepped into the center of the lab, neon lights splintering across polished surfaces like fractured glass. The storm outside rattled windows, and the rain streaked against reinforced panes with percussion-like intensity. Each drop sounded like a heartbeat, each flash of lightning a sudden, unflinching spotlight. He could feel the rhythm in his chest, in his bones, synchronized with the hum of machinery and the subtle vibrations of the floor. A soft metallic ping echoed behind him, not loud, not commanding, but deliberate. Someone had moved, testing boundaries, probing reactions. Elon's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just being observed, he was being challenged. He traced the sound, microbeat by microbeat, cataloging each nuance, each delay. The CIA's pattern was here, layered, adaptive, patient but not infallible. He reached for the hollow console, tapping a sequence that released a cascade of decoy data streams. Micro trails fed into surveillance loops, false coordinates, phantom alerts. The environment itself became part of the strategy. Flickering lights, hums, subtle mechanical clicks, each layer encoded to manipulate the unseen observers. A low, almost imperceptible vibration traveled through the floor. Elon recognized it immediately, not just movement, but anticipation. They were responding. A flicker in the reflection of the polished steel caught his attention. He froze. A shadow, one figure, precise, deliberate, entered from a side corridor. Lightning illuminated the space for a split second, revealing nothing but angles, edges, the suggestion of motion. He exhaled slowly. The adversary was close, but still partially invisible. Their signature was in sound, timing, and absence rather than in form. Then came the whisper, threaded through the mechanical hum. "We are closer than you think." Elon's pulse quickened. The words were intended to unsettle, to erode rhythm, to instill doubt. Instead, he felt clarity sharpen. Observation alone could be deceived, patterns manipulated, anticipation could be challenged. He activated a secondary system, releasing encrypted pulses into the facility's sensor network. Microsignals masked his presence, simulated movement, disrupted audio perception. He was no longer merely reacting, he was creating variables in a system designed to predict him. Footsteps resonated now in irregular cadences. Not one presence, but layered. Multiple agents, human and technological, coordinating without exposing themselves. Elon cataloged each microbeat. The subtle vibration beneath the floor, the faint metallic clicks, the low-frequency hums all combined to form an invisible map. He moved with it, aligning his steps, merging with the rhythm of the room, becoming both predator and prey simultaneously. Lightning illuminated the far corner, revealing a faint reflection of the intruder, almost like a ghost. Elon's lips pressed together. This wasn't coincidence, it was orchestration. A test. The CIA had engineered every movement, every sound, every environmental anomaly to provoke, measure, and predict. He could almost hear the silent calculations behind the clicks, the soft vibrations, the shifts in shadow. The paperclip in his palm vibrated again, subtle but insistent. Elon realized it wasn't just a physical object, it had become a sensor, a key to perceiving micro-changes in the environment, a talisman bridging intuition with evidence. He adjusted his stance, aligning with the room's rhythm, letting the storm, the hum, the shadows, and the microbeats guide him. Another whisper, fractured, almost inside his thoughts. Patterns converge, decisions echo. Elon's eyes scanned every surface, every reflection, every subtle flicker of light. He understood the message, convergence. A critical moment approaching. Elon scanned, approaching. He felt the weight of anticipation press against his chest, a tactile force that demanded precision, focus, and courage. This was no longer observation. This was engagement. A metallic click from above drew his gaze upward. A surveillance drone, small, sleek, almost invisible, hovered momentarily in the fractured neon. He smirked. Predictable. He had anticipated it. A sequence of countermeasures activated, electromagnetic pulses, visual obfuscation, data distortion. The drone faltered, adjusted, recalculated. and Elon could almost feel its algorithms straining against deliberate deception. The storm outside seemed to mirror the intensity inside. Rain lashed against the building, wind howled through hidden vents. Lightning split the sky with jagged precision. Inside, the lab vibrated with layered sound, hums, clicks, whispers, and micro-vibrations. Elon moved deliberately, each motion a negotiation with unseen forces. The CIA's presence was everywhere yet nowhere, a constant tension threading through every layer of perception. Then came a subtle, almost human sigh, carried in the ambient hum. Elon froze. Not a threat, not overt, but intimate, deliberate. Someone inside the facility, close, watching, testing, engaging. He felt the pulse of their observation like a pressure against his spine, and he smiled faintly. The game was no longer abstract. It had become personal, tactile, immediate. He activated a hidden protocol, sending a ripple of encrypted signals through the building systems, creating decoy presence, simulating movement, and amplifying sound motifs to mislead. Footsteps faltered, whispers paused. The environment itself seemed to hesitate, caught between truth and illusion. A reflection in the console's polished steel caught his eye. Movement, human, close, yet not immediate. He inhaled sharply. The CIA had escalated from observation to measured engagement. This was the moment when prediction met action, where patterns collided with improvisation. A whisper, clear this time, almost inside his ear. "We are here, always." Elon's jaw tightened. It was no longer about survival alone. It was about control, anticipation, and transformation. Every sound, shadow, reflection, and microbeat became part of a living strategy, a multi-layered narrative he could manipulate. Lightning illuminated a distant corridor. He saw, just for a fraction of a second, multiple shadows converging, moving with precision. The storm outside and the storm inside aligned, creating a tense synchronicity of pressure, anticipation, and possibility. He knew the CIA's approach had escalated to unavoidable confrontation. He exhaled slowly, centering himself. Every whisper, every vibration, every shadow had been observed, catalogued, and integrated. Now it was time to act, to influence the invisible battlefield, to turn anticipation into opportunity. The storm outside raged. Inside he became both observer and orchestrator, ready to meet the approaching convergence with calculated precision. And as the lab hummed, vibrated, and reflected fractured light, Elon realized something unmistakably clear. The game had entered its decisive phase. The CIA's presence was no longer a shadow, it was a challenge. And he was prepared to answer. The closer the threat, the sharper the mind becomes. Elon's hand hovered above the terminal, neon reflections splitting across his face like fractured lightning. The storm outside had become a relentless percussion, rain pounding against reinforced glass in jagged rhythms, wind slicing through vents with a hollow whistle. Every vibration, every echo, every microbeat of the lab was now a signal, a pulse, a potential clue. A sudden metallic click to his left made him pivot. Nothing visible, just a shift in the layered hum of the environment. Someone was moving slow, deliberate, measured. Not a shadow, not a shape, an intention manifested in sound. He aligned himself with the rhythm, feeling the floor's vibration, the hum's modulation, even the smallest whisper of air. This was not just survival. This was chess in motion, strategy encoded in environment, sound, and light. He activated a concealed array of countermeasures. Holographic decoys flickered into existence, projected as faint silhouettes that mimicked human movement. Encrypted pulses danced through the facility's systems, disrupting surveillance sensors. Each microlayer, the hum, the clicks, the flickering light was now weaponized, a misdirection for anyone attempting prediction. Footsteps multiplied, layered and irregular, echoing in calculated dissonance. Elon cataloged each pulse, each deviation, integrating them into his mental model of the intruder's positions. The CIA had escalated. Their precision was near perfect, but predictable in its adaptability. He smiled faintly. Patterns could be disrupted. Algorithms could be outwitted. A whisper threaded through the mechanical hum, almost inside his thoughts. You cannot control what you do not see. Elon's eyes scanned the fractured reflections across the lab, catching micro movements in monitors, consoles, and polished steel. He recognized the subtle cues: slight delays in reflection, faint shifts in shadow, tiny changes in hum frequency. Each anomaly represented a presence, each whisper a test. He had anticipated this escalation. He would respond not with reaction, but with orchestration. The storm outside split the sky with a blinding flash, illuminating corridors and fractured shadows. In that instant, he saw movement, a figure entering from the far side, precise, deliberate. He exhaled slowly. The engagement had begun. Lightning struck again, and in the fractured reflection, multiple figures appeared, converging, precise, coordinated. Elon pressed a sequence into the terminal. Holographic decoys shifted, lights flickered, mechanical vibrations altered subtly, creating false movement and phantom presence. Footsteps faltered, recalculated, became confused. The CIA's invisible agents were now navigating a layered labyrinth of perception. He felt the paperclip in his palm vibrate once more. It wasn't random. It was alignment, confirmation, a micro-signal syncing him with the hidden rhythms of intrusion. He moved, steps precise, synchronized with every environmental cue. The chase and the trap merged into one. Elon was both prey and predator, orchestrating the battlefield while adapting in real time. Another whisper, closer, deliberate, almost human. Every choice is observed. Every step recorded. Departure recorded on there. We have you tune it without, when you five, without watching of her daughter. Elon's jaw tightened. Observation alone could not harm him. Prediction could not cage him. He pressed another sequence, deploying counter-surveillance and environmental manipulation, exploiting the minute delays, the subtle echoes, the faint mechanical motifs that revealed positions. Shadows distorted, lights flickered, decoy reflections multiplied. The CIA's operatives were now navigating illusions, forced into reactions he could predict. The storm outside intensified. Rain streaked like lasers, wind howled through vents. Thunder cracked in sudden, jagged bursts. Inside, the lab was a symphony of sound, light, vibration, and reflection. Every layer was data. Every microbeat was intelligence. And Elon was translating it all into action. A low, almost imperceptible vibration signaled a direct approach from one figure. Elon pivoted, aligning himself with the rhythm of footsteps, hums, and air movement. In one fluid motion, he activated a localized EMP burst, disabling electronic sensors for a fraction of a second. The figure faltered. Noise, shadows, and reflections became chaotic. He advanced, steps, measured, aligning with the microbeats of the environment. Shadows shifted, overlapping, multiplying. Another whisper reached him, intimate and chilling. You cannot escape the pattern. Elon's eyes narrowed. Patterns were tools, not prisons. He manipulated them, bent them, fractured them. Holographic decoys advanced in coordination with environmental sounds. Footsteps, clicks, whispers, all layered to create confusion, misdirection, and advantage. Suddenly, a flash of light revealed the intruder's form, masked, deliberate, precise. Elon froze, studying movement, angle, timing. Another sequence activated. Lights shifted, reflections fractured, vibrations modulated. The figure faltered, recalculated, adjusted, and then, a breakthrough, a faint anomaly in their pattern, a micro delay in response to a decoy. Elon seized it instantly, closing distance, moving with controlled precision. The game was no longer theoretical. Engagement had entered the physical, the immediate. Every microbeat, every reflection, every shadow was a vector for action. Lightning split the sky once more, illuminating the lab in stark, jagged clarity. The intruder's hand reached for a console. Elon reacted, deploying a holographic barrier and activating a secondary EMP pulse. The figure staggered, disrupted, visible for a fleeting moment in the fractured neon. He had forced a moment of vulnerability. Another whisper, sharp and human, "We underestimated you." Elon's pulse quickened. Not from fear, but from focus. The CIA's precision had met its countermeasure. The storm, the lights, the shadows, the hum, the reflections all aligned in a perfect, chaotic rhythm he now controlled. Observation had turned into engagement, anticipation into advantage. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder cracked, wind roared through vents. The lab vibrated with layered sound. Hums, clicks, footsteps, whispers, and micro-vibrations. Elon moved with absolute precision, exploiting the chaos, fracturing perception, bending patterns to his will. The confrontation had reached its peak, the unseen had become tactical, and the storm, both external and internal, had revealed its true rhythm. In that charged, fractured moment, clarity struck him. The CIA's presence, relentless and omnipresent, was no longer a shadow. It was a challenge, and he was ready not just to survive, but to dictate the terms, to convert perception into power, to turn the invisible battlefield into a controlled, living narrative of his own making. Some battles are fought not with force, but with the mind's quiet ferocity. The storm outside had escalated into a relentless torrent, rain slashing against reinforced glass with the intensity of 1,000 tiny hammers. Lightning split the sky in jagged veins of white, illuminating the lab in stark, fleeting clarity. Every reflective surface fractured the neon glow into multiple angles, creating a labyrinth of perception and shadow. Elon stood at the center, every nerve attuned to microbeats. Hums, clicks, whispers, vibrations. The environment had become both ally and weapon. Footsteps multiplied, layered and irregular, echoing from unseen corridors. The CIA's operatives were converging, calculated precision beneath their masks, relying on prediction and probability. But Elon had fractured the equations. Each holographic decoy, each electromagnetic pulse, every manipulated reflection created uncertainty, forcing adaptation. He was no longer being hunted, he was orchestrating the battlefield itself. A subtle metallic hum vibrated through the floor, signaling the approach of a central operative, the mastermind behind the infiltration. Elon's fingers hovered over the console, activating a sequence that projected multiple holographic duplicates of himself across the lab. They flickered, shimmered, overlapped with reality, creating dissonance between sight, sound, and instinct. Then a whisper, sharp, almost intimate. "You cannot hide from inevitability." Elon smirked. Inevitability was a concept for those who failed to anticipate. He allowed the whisper to thread through the ambient hum, cataloging it, measuring its intent, predicting the timing of action. In that moment, clarity struck him. The CIA's plan was not merely observation, it was manipulation. Every decoy, every shadow, every microbeat had been designed to steer him into choices that favored their endgame. Lightning struck, illuminating a corridor. He saw movement figures converging with deliberate coordination, precise, ruthless. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. Elon exhaled, aligning with the rhythm of the environment. Each sound, each shadow, each reflection became data, and each microbeat became a tool. The convergence was here, unavoidable. A low, mechanical click, followed by a faint metallic ping, indicated the approach of drones, small, agile, precise. He had anticipated this. A flick of his wrist triggered electromagnetic pulses, disrupting sensors, causing the drones to stagger mid-flight, recalibrate. Human operatives faltered, adjusting to false signals, decoy movements, and shifted reflections. Chaos now served him. A whisper cut through the chaos, deliberate. "Your control ends now." Elon's pulse didn't quicken with fear. It steadied with focus. Every microbeat of the lab, every fractured reflection, every ripple in the hum and vibration had been mapped, cataloged, integrated. He moved with precision, steps synchronized to the environment, closing the distance between anticipation and action. Lightning revealed the mastermind, a figure masked, deliberate, calculating. The air between them thickened with tension, every vibration, every sound, every shadow a pulse of the impending clash. Elon's holographic decoys shimmered and shifted, fracturing perception, bending probability, creating hesitation. The first move came a rapid dash from the operative, calculated to exploit perceived gaps. Elon reacted, not with force, but with environmental manipulation. Holographic duplicates shimmered across the lab. Lights flickered to distort vision, floor vibrations, subtly shifted to mislead step perception. The operative staggered, recalculated, faltered. A low hum vibrated beneath the floor, a signature of Elon's own creation, a subtle countermeasure that disrupted microperception. The operative's eyes flicked, uncertainty creeping into precision. The storm outside mirrored the tension inside, every lightning strike a heartbeat of clarity. Another whisper, "You were always predictable." Elon's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. Predictable? No. Observable? Yes. Anticipatable? Yes. But manipulable? Absolutely. He triggered the final sequence, a layered orchestration of light, sound, vibration, and holographic projection. The lab fractured into multiple realities, each a potential pathway, each a microtrap designed to control perception and force reaction. Footsteps staggered, drones faltered, reflections multiplied, shadows shifted unpredictably. The CIA's convergence. Their plan was now a cascade of forced adaptations, and Elon moved through it with precision, a conductor orchestrating chaos. Lightning illuminated the mastermind again. Their hesitation, however brief, was enough. Elon closed the distance, hands precise, movements calculated, using the environment itself as leverage. The confrontation was no longer a fight, it was a strategic collapse of the opponent's perception. Every microbeat, every sound, every flicker, every reflection combined into a decisive sequence. Then, silence brief, profound, suspended. The storm's roar outside seemed to pause, the hum of machinery stilled, shadows froze mid-shift. And in that suspended moment, Elon realized the final truth. Control was not about overpowering force, it was mastery of rhythm, perception, and choice. He held the battlefield, both seen and unseen. The operative faltered completely, caught between illusions, disrupted perception, and the precise orchestration of environment. Elon's voice, calm but firm, carried over the residual hum. "This ends now. I thank you for watching." Well, lightning split the sky again, illuminating the lab in stark clarity. The convergence, the infiltration, the calculated manipulations all collapsed in the face of strategy executed with precision. The CIA's plan, formidable and meticulous, had met its countermeasure: understanding, adaptation, and control. The storm outside began to wane, rain softening, wind easing. Inside, the lab hummed quietly, reflections fractured but stable, shadows aligned. Elon exhaled slowly, pulse steady, mind sharp. He had turned observation into engagement, anticipation into advantage, and chaos into control. The invisible battlefield was now fully his. A final whisper, faint, almost admiring, "You are unseen, yet everywhere." Elon's lips curved into a subtle smile. Perhaps they would learn, perhaps not. But the game had been played, the challenge met, and for the first time, he felt complete mastery, not just of the environment, but of the patterns, the players, and the invisible rules that had governed the battle. And in that quiet aftermath, fractured neon reflecting against polished steel, he understood. Storms, shadows, and whispers could be anticipated, bent, and ultimately mastered. And mastery, that quiet, unseen ferocity, was the only true victory. Even when the storm subsides, its echoes linger in every shadow. The rain had slowed to a gentle patter, a soft counterpoint to the chaos that had dominated the night. Neon reflections shimmered across the lab's polished surfaces, fractured light dissolving into quiet clarity. Elon walked slowly, each step deliberate, listening to the subtle hum of machinery, the faint echoes of micro-vibrations that still lingered. Even in calm, the environment spoke in whispers only he could interpret. The storm outside had passed, but inside, a new rhythm had emerged, less frantic, more deliberate, controlled. Shadows no longer danced unpredictably. They rested in alignment, responding to deliberate light and movement. He paused at the edge of the lab, observing the fractured reflections. The holographic decoys had dissolved. The residual traces of manipulation were faint but persistent, like footprints in sand, subtle markers of battles fought and won. A faint, metallic ping drew his attention. Not threatening, not urgent, just present. A signal, a reminder that engagement never truly ends. He smiled faintly. The CIA's presence had receded, their plan neutralized, yet the aftershocks remained. Observation had become adaptation, engagement had become mastery. But mastery required constant awareness. A pause, a misstep, and chaos could return. Lightning flickered briefly on the horizon, distant, almost ornamental. Elon's reflection caught in the polished steel, fragmented, yet whole. He saw not just himself, but the patterns, the shadows, the echoes of microbeats that had guided every move, every reaction, every strategy. The battle had been won not with force alone, but with perception, calculation, and the patient orchestration of environment. A whisper threaded through the soft hum of machinery, subtle, almost reverent. Not everyone can see the rhythm. You can. Elon exhaled, letting the tension leave him gradually, allowing the quiet to settle into the edges of awareness. The lab felt different now, empty, yet full of residual motion, a living record of choices, anticipation, and decisive action. Every surface, every reflection, every subtle vibration was a memory of the storm, a reminder that vigilance was as crucial as action. He moved toward a console, tapping a sequence that archived all data, securing it behind layers of encryption that even the most persistent observer would struggle to penetrate. The paperclip in his palm vibrated faintly, a microsignal, almost playful. It had become more than a tool. It was a bridge between intuition and evidence, a reminder that even the smallest objects could anchor understanding. Outside, the city was quiet, lights flickering as the storm's energy dissipated into night. Wind had softened to a whisper. Rain now, mere percussion on distant rooftops. Inside, the lab was a sanctuary of clarity, reflection, and controlled rhythm. Yet, Elon knew the echoes would return. The CIA, the storm, the patterns, they were never gone entirely. Observation was relentless, and mastery required constant adaptation. A final whisper, carried not in sound but in thought. The game never ends, only evolves. Elon allowed himself a brief smile. Perhaps the storm had passed, but awareness, precision, and adaptation were eternal. The night stretched around him, calm yet charged with latent energy. Every shadow, every reflection, every faint hum was a reminder. Vigilance is power, perception is control, and the unseen rules the visible. He stepped back, letting the lab breathe, letting the lights settle into a gentle rhythm. The storm's echoes remained, subtle but present, guiding the next move, the next choice, the next engagement. And in that quiet aftermath, one truth stood unshakable. Mastery is not victory over chaos, it is harmony with it. Even after victory, shadows linger where light refuses to reach. The lab was quiet now, but Elon could feel the subtle tension in the air, like a string pulled taut beneath calm waves. Neon reflections shimmered across polished steel, fractured in angles that made the space feel both familiar and foreign. The storm had passed, yet the rhythm of anticipation remained, pulsing faintly in every surface. Every micro-vibration beneath his feet. He moved deliberately, each step aligned with the hum of machinery and the faint clicks still echoing in hidden corridors. The paperclip in his palm vibrated subtly, not as warning, not as alert, but as a whisper, an acknowledgement that presence never truly fades. The CIA's withdrawal had been tactical, not permanent. Observation didn't end with defeat, it evolved. A faint, metallic hiss sounded from a vent above. Elon froze, eyes narrowing. Not immediate danger, but deliberate motion. Someone, or something, was still inside the building. He adjusted his stance, synchronizing with the microbeats of the environment. Each shadow, each flicker of light, each subtle hum became a data point, a guide to what was unseen. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the lab in fractured neon. In that instant, he saw movement, a figure crossing the periphery of reflected light, deliberate, calculated, but hesitant. A reconnaissance, perhaps, testing residual defenses. Elon exhaled slowly, letting the calm and focus settle. He had turned chaos into a system, and now he would observe it responding. He tapped a sequence on the console, activating subtle countermeasures, flickering holographic decoys, micro-frequency vibrations, and environmental manipulations designed to mislead observation. Footsteps faltered in response. Whispers paused. The lab itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. A soft, almost human whisper echoed through the hum, "Not gone, just watching." Elon's lips curved into a faint smile. The acknowledgement was clear. Victory had not ended the game. It had shifted. Observation remained relentless, persistent, and adaptive. He moved toward a corner of the lab where reflections fractured the neon glow into multiple layers. Shadows played across polished steel, dancing like fragmented echoes of what had occurred. He catalogued every shift, every glimmer, every microbeat. A sudden vibration traveled beneath the floor, small, deliberate, almost imperceptible. Elon recognized the signature, a remote drone, smaller than before, designed for surveillance without engagement. He pivoted, steps aligned with micro-vibrations, adjusting the environment with subtle pulses of electromagnetic interference. The drone faltered, recalculated, and Elon watched its algorithms strain invisibly against his manipulations. A whisper. Closer this time, threaded through the soft mechanical hum. Control is temporary. 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 Elon exhaled, steady, deliberate. Temporary was acceptable. Awareness and adaptation were permanent. He activated another layer of holographic decoys, each mirroring micro-movements of his own body, projecting presence across multiple points of the lab. Shadows fractured further, reflections multiplied, and every observation vector became unreliable. The storm outside had softened, leaving distant rumbles, soft wind, and residual rain. Inside, the lab was alive with subtle motion, hums, vibrations, faint clicks, and fractured neon reflections. Elon moved like a conductor, orchestrating chaos into structured perception. Each microbeat, each whisper, each shadow aligned into a rhythm only he could fully read. Then, a shift, a new micro-vibration, distinct from the drones. Human. Close. Testing. Measuring. The CIA had left agents embedded, silent, adaptive, observing from the shadows. They were learning from the night's defeat, evolving strategies in real time. Elon's pulse did not quicken. He adjusted his stance, letting intuition merge with calculated observation. Every shadow, every reflection, every whisper became a tool. Lightning flashed again, brief but revealing. In the reflection of polished steel, he glimpsed a figure crouched, observing, calculating. No aggression yet, just observation, patient, meticulous. The game had shifted. Anticipation had become engagement without confrontation. Elon smiled faintly. Control was subtle, mastery persistent. He would not need to act hastily. Every micro-movement, every whisper, every shadow, now worked in his favor. A faint whisper floated through the ambient hum, barely audible. "We will return, prepared." Elon exhaled slowly, letting the words settle. Preparation was predictable. Strategy was controllable. Observation remained relentless. But so did adaptation. Victory was not a single moment. It was an ongoing mastery of perception, environment, and choice. He moved to the console, activating a subtle archival protocol recording, encrypting, and manipulating the traces of the night's engagement. Every shadow, every microbeat, every reflection would serve as both record and shield. The lab breathed quietly around him, hums resonating faintly, reflections stable, shadows aligned. The storm had passed outside, but inside, the environment retained its own rhythm, a living, persistent pulse of observation and adaptation. Elon's gaze swept across the lab, neon reflections fracturing into multiple layers, each angle a reminder of what had been and what could come. A final whisper, threading through the mechanical hum, softer than before. Always watching, always learning. Elon's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. The storm was gone. The CIA had not vanished, they never truly did, but he had created the system, the rhythm, and the awareness to anticipate, adapt, and master every shadow, every whisper, every subtle vibration. Victory was no longer a moment in time. It was the continuous, quiet ferocity of perception and control, woven into every corner of the lab, every reflection, every microbeat, and as the night stretched around him, calm, yet charged with residual energy, he realized the truth. Some battles never truly end. They evolve. They linger in whispers, shadows, and vibrations. Mastery, however, was eternal. The quietest threats are often the deadliest, hiding in plain perception. The city outside had settled into an uneasy calm. Neon lights reflected off rain-slick streets, fractured into infinite angles, yet within the lab, tension hummed like a barely restrained wire. Elon moved deliberately, every step aligned with the soft vibrations beneath the floor, the hum of machinery, and the faint mechanical clicks that had begun to signal subtle anomalies. The storm had passed, but another one was quietly forming inside the walls, invisible yet precise. A flicker of light on the polished steel reflection caught his attention. Too subtle to be random, a microbeat, a vibration almost indistinguishable from the ambient hum rippled beneath his boots. His pulse remained steady, recognition replaced surprise. The CIA's embedded network was not gone. It had adapted, evolved, and now tested the edges of his defenses. He reached the console, fingers dancing over encrypted sequences. Holographic decoys shimmered to life. Precise copies of his movements scattered across the lab. Light flickered, reflecting in multiple planes, fracturing perception. Small electromagnetic pulses shivered through the room, nudging micro-vibrations into patterns only he could read. Footsteps faltered somewhere in the distance, adjustments to unseen observations. Elon's lips curved faintly. Control, subtle and persistent, was his ally. A whisper threaded through the ambient hum, faint yet deliberate. We watch differently now, we adapt. Elon's eyes narrowed. Observation had always been relentless, but adaptation was evolution. The CIA was learning from the past night's failure. He allowed a brief pause, letting the lab's environment settle into a rhythm he could manipulate. Shadows shifted in response to flickering lights, reflections fractured and multiplied across polished surfaces. The hum and vibration pulsed in calculated synchrony. Every microbeat became a guide, a weapon, and a misdirection all at once. Then a subtle shift, a low, almost imperceptible drone vibration underfoot. Elon froze, mapping its trajectory against the lab's existing microbeats. Not aggressive yet, just testing. Its sensors were probing, adjusting, recalibrating. He responded instantly, triggering a secondary layer of holographic decoys, shifting light angles, and introducing tiny, dissonant vibrations in the floor. The drone hesitated, algorithms straining against the manipulated environment. Another whisper. Closer now, human in tone, but filtered through mechanical distortion. Predictable, only until you're observed differently. Elon exhaled slowly. Predictability was always a temporary illusion. Adaptation was permanent. He moved, body and mind, in complete alignment with the lab's rhythm. Shadows, light, and vibration bent around him. Every reflection was analyzed, every flicker measured, every whisper catalogued. He could anticipate motion before it fully materialized, an orchestra of perception and action. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the lab through fractured neon windows. In that brief burst of clarity, he saw it. A micro-anomaly, a shadow misaligned with any reflection, a micro-vibration out of sync with the rest of the environment. A breach. Not immediate danger, but an indicator of deeper, systemic infiltration. He pivoted, adjusting his holographic projections to create layered misdirection, manipulating every perceptual input the intruder could access. The drone faltered mid-flight, recalculating, while a faint whisper, now unmistakably human, echoed. Every microbeat is observed, every reflection catalogued. Elon's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Every breach, every anomaly, every unseen observation was part of a predictable rhythm when integrated properly. He adjusted environmental parameters, subtle electromagnetic pulses, nudging vibrations, light angles fracturing reflections, and decoys shifting imperceptibly. Footsteps, clicks, mechanical hums all became vectors for control, each one bending the behavior of those watching him. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and wind whispered softly through distant buildings. Inside, the lab pulsed with life, subtle yet potent. Every microbeat, every fractured shadow, every faint hum was a note in a symphony only Elon could orchestrate. And yet, the whispers persisted, adaptive and relentless, a constant reminder. The CIA was evolving, recalibrating, and always observing. A low vibration traveled beneath the floor again, this time deliberate. Probing. Closer. Elon pivoted, analyzing reflection angles, shadow alignment, and vibration frequencies. Another sequence activated. Secondary decoys shifted in tandem with environmental cues. Subtle light flares fractured perception, and electromagnetic micropulses disrupted sensor calibration. The unseen operatives adjusted, hesitation creeping into their calculated movements. A whisper, almost intimate, threaded through the hum. "Every master has a limit. We will find yours." Unquote. Elon's pulse remained steady. Limits existed, yes, but awareness and adaptation created space beyond them. Every microbeat, every subtle anomaly, every reflection or shadow was data leveraged into control. He moved fluidly, integrating observation and prediction, converting potential vulnerability into advantage. Then, suddenly, a cascade of micro-anomalies, multiple drones, subtle energy signatures, and faint human movement, all converging. The CIA's embedded network had activated in full. Their adaptation was rapid, precise, and aggressive, but still subject to manipulation. Elon's mind accelerated in perfect alignment with the environment, orchestrating holographic decoys, light shifts, and vibrational pulses to fracture observation. Every movement of the intruders became predictable under his orchestration. A final whisper, layered and distorted, carried over the mechanical hum. "This is only the beginning. We are inside every shadow." Elon exhaled, letting the weight of the warning settle. He allowed a faint smile, the corner of lips curving almost imperceptibly. The storm had shifted from external chaos to subtle, unseen infiltration. And yet, he was ready. Observation, adaptation, and mastery were eternal. Every microbeat, every reflection, every whisper was now his domain, the invisible battlefield entirely under his control. Outside, neon reflected off wet streets, fractured like prisms, soft rain pattering in rhythm with distant wind. Inside, the lab pulsed subtly, alive with orchestrated motion. The CIA's network had escalated, but Elon had anticipated the evolution. Control was no longer reaction, it was omnipresent, quiet, relentless, and in that charged silence, he realized, some battles never end. They evolve, hidden in shadows, whispers, and vibrations. But mastery, the quiet, perpetual command of perception and environment, was a force no observation could fully overcome. When unseen forces converge, the mind becomes the ultimate battlefield. The lab no longer felt like a room. It was a network of angles, reflections, vibrations, and shadows, a living map of perception and prediction. Elon moved through it like a conductor, navigating a symphony he alone could hear. The CIA's embedded network had escalated. Micro-anomalies now pulsed in multiple vectors simultaneously, subtle but deliberate. Testing, probing, adapting. A low, metallic hum resonated beneath the floorboards. Not a drone this time, something heavier, deliberate. Human movement, calculated, synchronized. Elon's eyes scanned reflections, every fractured surface revealing glimpses of intent. Neon glints fractured across steel, multiplying figures, bending perception. He exhaled slowly. Control, patience, and observation remained his allies. Then came the first strike, a sudden, sharp vibration under his right foot, almost imperceptible, like a microquake. He pivoted, activating an array of holographic decoys across the lab. Light fractured, shadows multiplied, vibrations adjusted subtly. The intruders paused, recalculating, their algorithms struggling to match the unpredictable flow he had created. A whisper, tense and human, threaded through the mechanical hum. "Stop anticipating, this time we end it." Elon's lips curved faintly. Endings were illusions. Every strike, every probe, every whisper, was now data information to manipulate, bending the invisible battlefield to his advantage. He moved, almost imperceptibly, aligning each microbeat of motion with the lab's ambient rhythm. Shadows shifted, reflections fractured, and every sound a creak, a whisper, a hum became a tool. Lightning from the distance flickered through the lab's fractured neon, illuminating a figure sliding along a reflection's edge, fast, precise, calculated. Elon adjusted instantly, holographic duplicates shimmering across the floor, walls, and ceiling. The operative faltered, misreading the landscape, hesitating for the barest fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. A mechanical click announced another intrusion, a micro-drone, smaller, faster, adaptive. Elon's fingers danced over the console, activating pulses that fractured the drone's sensor calibration. Light angles bent, shadows multiplied, vibrations disrupted. Every micro-movement of the intruder became predictable, manipulated, refracted through his orchestration. Another whisper cut through the hum, layered, tense. Your awareness will not save you forever. Elon's mind did not tighten with fear. It expanded, absorbing the complexity, calculating the probabilities, bending the environment into vectors of control. Every microbeat, every flicker, every whisper was integrated into a new sequence of preemptive adaptation. Observation was not enough. He manipulated perception, bending reality into his advantage. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from a fractured reflection, moving with deliberate speed. Elon's pulse accelerated not with fear, but with anticipation. This was the human vector, the operative, most trained, most adaptive, most dangerous. He allowed the figure to advance, guiding every microstep through pre-calculated environmental cues, light reflections, subtle vibrations in the floor, shifted shadows, ambient hums, footsteps, metallic clicks, soft air shifts, and subtle whispers all converged in a complex rhythm. Elon moved in perfect alignment, body, mind, and environment synchronized. Holographic decoys shimmered in and out of perception, fracturing intent, creating hesitation, bending time itself in the operative's mind. Lightning illuminated the operative again, caught between multiple conflicting signals. Elon exhaled, activating a subtle electromagnetic pulse that disrupted microsensors embedded in the operative's gear. The human staggered, recalculating, off balance for a fraction of a second. That fraction became the fulcrum of the encounter. A whisper, faint but sharp, impossible how. Elon's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. Mastery was not force, it was rhythm, perception, adaptation. Every microbeat, every shadow, every reflection had been orchestrated to bend the battlefield without ever touching the opponent. He moved forward, using the environment as leverage, lights, reflections, vibrations, and sound, guiding his presence, while obscuring intent. The operative lunged, fast, precise, aggressive, but misread the holographic cues, shadows, and light angles. Elon sidestepped, almost invisible, using the floor's subtle vibrations to destabilize balance. A microstep, a flicker of neon, a soft hum all coalesced into an invisible barrier. The human crashed against fractured reflections, disoriented, while Elon remained centered, aligned, untouchable. A final whisper, layered with mechanical distortion, echoed. You may control the environment, but you cannot control the inevitable. Elon exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the words settle. Inevitable was just another pattern to observe, bend, and master. He moved to the console, initiating a cascading sequence of adaptive manipulations, decoys, light fractures, vibration pulses, and holographic overlays. Every operative, every drone, every probe became delayed, disoriented, or misdirected. Outside, neon flickered over wet streets, distant rumbles of storm remnants echoing faintly. Inside, the lab pulsed with controlled rhythm, shadows aligned, reflections fractured yet stable, vibrations tuned. Elon's eyes scanned every angle, calculating, predicting, orchestrating. The battle had escalated to its human vector, the pinnacle of observation and adaptation, but mastery remained his domain. And in the charged silence after the storm of motion, one truth remained unshakable. Battles never truly end. They evolve, adapt, and return. But mastery, quiet, relentless, and precise, was eternal. Every shadow holds a secret, and every secret can ignite the storm. The lab had transformed into a battlefield of perception. Neon light fractured across polished steel, multiplied reflections, and shadows stretched, bent, and overlapped. Every surface became a mirror, every vibration a message. Elon moved deliberately, synchronizing his breath with the soft hum of machinery, the subtle pulse of vibrations beneath the floor, and the faint mechanical clicks that hinted at unseen movements. The CIA's escalation was no longer subtle. It had become systemic, invasive, and relentless. A sudden micro-vibration traveled through the floor, stronger, more precise than before. Elon froze, eyes scanning every angle. The human vector from before was joined by multiple presences, drones, and mechanical probes, all coordinated, all adaptive. Observation alone would no longer suffice. He would have to manipulate perception to the limits, bending reality itself to his will. He activated a layered sequence of holographic decoys, light fractures, and subtle electromagnetic pulses. The reflections multiplied endlessly, creating a maze of perception. Shadows moved independently, responding not to him but to the intruder's actions, subtly guiding their miscalculations. Footsteps faltered. Drones hesitated mid-flight. A whisper threaded through the ambient hum, sharper now, almost mocking. Control is temporary. The system adapts faster than you. Elon's lips curved faintly. Temporary was acceptable. Awareness and adaptation were not. He moved fluidly, blending with the rhythm of the environment. Every microbeat of vibration, every flicker of neon, every reflection meticulously aligned with his intent. The lab was no longer a room. It was an extension of his mind, a web of observation and influence. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating a swarm of micro-drones converging from multiple entry points. Elon anticipated their trajectory before sensors could report it. A faint hum shifted, vibrations adjusted, light angles refracted, every element manipulated to fracture perception. The drones misaligned, algorithms recalculating in futile attempts to synchronize. Then, the human vector appeared again. This time, faster, more precise, adaptive beyond previous encounters. Elon allowed them to advance, each step guided by subtle environmental cues. Fractured light, displaced reflections, and controlled floor vibrations. The operative moved with deadly intent, but every micromovement was predicted, every trajectory subtly altered. A mechanical click announced another intrusion, a larger device, heavier, designed to bypass microbeat manipulations. Elon's pulse remained steady. He initiated a cascading sequence. Holographic decoys multiplied, light fractures intensified, floor vibrations subtly shifted, and electromagnetic pulses disrupted sensor calibrations. Every microbeat of the intruder was now observable, predictable, and manipulable. A whisper, layered and distorted, echoed again. You may bend perception, but you cannot stop inevitability. Elon exhaled, steady, deliberate. Inevitable was simply a challenge to pattern recognition. He moved with precision, orchestrating reflections, vibrations, and decoys into a choreography that made intrusion impossible without detection. The human vector lunged, precise, lethal but miscalculated. Yeah, ever why? Fractured reflections, holographic duplicates, and environmental manipulations converged, creating hesitation, disorientation, misalignment. The operative faltered, regaining balance only as Elon moved fluidly, untouchable, entirely integrated with his surroundings. Outside, the storm had faded into distant rumbles. But inside, the lab pulsed with orchestrated rhythm, shadows bending, reflections multiplying, micro-vibrations dancing in calculated patterns. Elon's eyes scanned, mind analyzing, predicting, orchestrating. Every intrusion, every probe, every micro-movement became a component of a larger system, his system. Then came the unexpected, a micro-anomaly, not mechanical, not human. A new layer of infiltration, unpredictable and intelligent. Elon's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with recognition. Adaptation alone would not suffice. He would have to anticipate perception itself, manipulate the intruder's awareness, and bend instinct. A whisper, soft, almost intimate, threaded through the hum. Even mastery has its limit. We are evolution incarnate. Elon's lips curved faintly. Limits were illusions, patterns only waiting to be understood. He adjusted, orchestrating a complex array of environmental manipulations, light, shadows, vibrations, and reflections synchronized into an invisible lattice of control. Every microbeat of the intruder was now guided, delayed, redirected. The new threat faltered, misaligned, and in that hesitation, Elon struck not with force, but with precision perception. The room became a symphony of controlled chaos. Whispers, mechanical hums, soft clicks, fractured reflections, and micro-vibrations all converging into a single, coherent rhythm. The intruders, human and machine alike, struggled to reconcile the environment with their expectations. Elon moved through it all, calm, composed, omnipresent in perception if not in body. And then, in a fleeting instant, silence fell. The lab seemed to hold its breath. Drones hung motionless. Human vectors paused mid-step, and reflections fractured into perfect stillness. The system had been mastered. For now, a final whisper lingered, faint and echoing. This is only the beginning. We have merely awakened. Elon exhaled, letting the words settle. Mastery had been tested, perception had prevailed, and adaptation had become absolute. Yet, he knew the truth. Battles never truly end, they evolve, hidden in shadows, whispers, and microbeats. Victory was not a moment, it was an ongoing command of reality itself. Neon reflections shimmered across steel, rain pattered softly against distant windows, and the lab pulsed subtly with life. Elon's gaze swept across every angle, every reflection, every shadow aware, present, prepared. The storm of escalation had reached its first climax, but he understood one immutable fact. As long as observation persisted, mastery must endure. The final move is never about strength, it's about seeing what others cannot. The lab was a living pulse of shadows, neon reflections, and vibrations, an ecosystem of perception and reaction. Every surface refracted light into fractals. Every hum carried hidden information, every microvibration a message. Elon's mind was synced to it all, senses heightened, predictions flowing in rhythm with the environment. The CIA's network had evolved, now converging simultaneously human vectors, microdrones, mechanical probes, and an intelligence that seemed almost sentient. The storm had arrived in full, silent, calculated, and relentless. A low-frequency vibration rippled beneath the floor, then fragmented into multiple pulses, each calibrated to test, distract, and disrupt. Elon felt them as subtly as a heartbeat under his boots. He moved deliberately, body attuned to the rhythm, eyes scanning every reflection, every shifting shadow, every flicker of light. Control was his weapon, observation, his armor, adaptation, his strategy. Then it struck an intruder, moving faster than before, almost imperceptible, weaving between reflections, ignoring vibrations, bypassing decoys. The human vector had mastered anticipation, learned from previous encounters, and now forced Elon to respond on instinct alone. He inhaled, synchronized with the hum of machinery, then exhaled, allowing micro-adjustments to flow through the lab. Holographic decoys multiplied, reflections fractured exponentially, vibrations shifted unpredictably, light angles bent, and subtle electromagnetic pulses disrupted microsensors. Every microbeat of the intruder became mapped, predicted, and manipulated before it could occur. A whisper cut through the hum, layered and distorted, human yet mechanical. Mastery is fleeting, perception is fallible. Elon's lips curved faintly. Fleeing mastery is easy, sustaining it requires awareness beyond instinct. He advanced, movements synchronized with shadows, vibrations, and reflections. The operative lunged, precise and aggressive, but misaligned with the environment's orchestrated rhythm. One microstep, one flicker of fractured light, one calculated vibration. Suddenly the intruder faltered, staggered, disoriented. From the periphery, micro-drones swarmed, adaptive, calculating, trying to anticipate, intercept, and destabilize. Elon adjusted instantaneously, reflections multiplied, decoys shifted, vibrations fragmented, and pulses disrupted sensor arrays. The drones hesitated mid-flight, algorithms scrambling to reconcile the manipulated environment. Then came the unexpected, a shadow detached from fractured neon, moving with intelligence beyond prediction. A new layer of threat, faster, smarter, adaptive, instinctive. Elon's pulse quickened. This was recognition, the pinnacle of challenge. The human vector from before merged with this new anomaly, creating a coordinated assault that tested every limit of perception. A whisper, intimate and chilling. Even the invisible has limits, Elon. We are inevitability incarnate. He exhaled, letting calm permeate every fiber of his being. Limits were data. Perception could be extended, twisted, bent, and manipulated. Every microbeat, every reflection, every vibration became a tool in a vast, unseen architecture of control. The room became a symphony of chaos, orchestrated into coherence. Shadows moved independently. Reflections multiplied endlessly. Vibrations fractured yet synchronized, and the hum of machinery became a subtle rhythm guiding every movement. The intruders advanced, adaptive and relentless, but every step was anticipated, every strike misdirected, every sensor disrupted. Lightning from distant storms illuminated the lab, fracturing neon reflections into kaleidoscopic patterns. In that instant of clarity, Elon saw the entirety of the battlefield simultaneously. Shadows, reflections, vibrations, decoys, intruders, drones all mapped, understood, and controlled. A final human vector lunged, faster, stronger, precise. Elon sidestepped, a subtle vibration destabilizing balance, a flicker of fractured light, confusing perception, a microbeat of electromagnetic pulse disorienting sensors. The operative stumbled, misaligned, trapped in a web of invisible manipulations. Mechanical drones collided against each other, micro-anomalies faltered, and the new shadowed threat paused, recalibrating, unable to anticipate the depth of environmental orchestration. Elon exhaled slowly, moving fluidly through the chaos, untouchable, omnipresent in perception. A whisper, layered, distorted, human, mechanical. This is not over, we are everywhere. As Elon's gaze swept the lab, taking in every fractal reflection, every subtle vibration, every shifting shadow. Calm and centered, he activated a final sequence. Light fractures intensified, holographic decoys multiplied to infinite permutations, vibrations shifted into unpredictable patterns, and electromagnetic pulses disrupted every remaining sensor. The intruders, human and machine, were suspended in disorientation, their coordination shattered, and then silence. Absolute, controlled silence. The lab pulsed subtly, alive only in the rhythm of Elon's awareness. Shadows aligned, reflections stabilized, vibrations harmonized. The storm outside had passed entirely, leaving only the quiet hum of mastery. Elon exhaled again, letting the culmination settle. Every threat had been neutralized without force, every intrusion bent into observation, every microbeat accounted for and controlled. The CIA's network had evolved, but mastery had outpaced it. Control was not victory, it was permanence in awareness, sustained adaptation, and orchestration of reality itself. Neon reflected across wet steel, shadows danced predictably, and the lab pulsed with quiet life. Elon's eyes scanned every angle, every reflection, every shadow. The storm had reached its peak, and though future battles would come, mastery had endured silent, absolute, and eternal. In silence after the storm, the mind sees truths the world cannot. The lab was quiet now, but not still. Neon reflections shimmered softly across polished steel, fractured and overlapping in a slow, hypnotic dance. The hum of machinery had returned to its baseline, subtle yet deliberate, resonating like a heartbeat in the room. Elon stood at the center, calm, collected, aware of every micro-vibration underfoot, every shadow bending across surfaces, every whisper of air moving through vents. The battlefield had shifted, but its lessons lingered like echoes. He exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of observation settle. Every encounter, every intrusion, every microbeat had been a test, and the test had been passed not by force, but by awareness. Mastery was not domination. It was perception stretched to its limits, bending reality into a lattice of control without ever breaking it. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating rain-soaked streets outside. The storm had passed physically, but the echoes remained. In reflections, Elon saw the traces of the CIA's network, subtle distortions, micro-anomalies, and adaptive remnants. Nothing could fully vanish. Everything left a trace. And in those traces lay the future, fragile, yet inevitable, waiting for the next interaction, the next challenge. He walked slowly along the perimeter of the lab, fingertips grazing the smooth steel surfaces. Shadows shifted in response to his presence, reflections multiplied, and the hum responded, almost conversationally, in a rhythm only he could perceive. A faint whisper echoed from somewhere deep in the building. "We will return, watch carefully." Elon did not flinch. Observation was eternal. Adaptation never ceased. The whisper was merely data, another layer to integrate, another vector to map. He paused by a fractured reflection, studying it, noting the micro-vibrations that betrayed hidden patterns. Even in silence, the environment was alive, dynamic, and full of intelligence. Mastery required patience, attention, and humility. Outside, distant sirens echoed faintly through the urban night. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, soft on the neon-lit streets. He looked beyond the lab windows, seeing a city oblivious to the invisible war unfolding in quiet corners, shadows, and reflections. Yet awareness transcended perception. The true power lay not in what others saw, but in what he understood. Elon returned to the center of the lab, standing still, breathing in the rhythm of his orchestrated environment. Every reflection, every vibration, every whisper was a reminder. Battles never truly end. They evolve, hidden in subtle patterns, in perception, in adaptation. The CIA's network had tested him, escalated, challenged, and yet it had revealed a fundamental truth: mastery is not about the elimination of threats, but about the sustained command of reality itself. A faint smile curved his lips. Silence was not emptiness, it was opportunity. Observation was not passive, it was eternal vigilance. Adaptation was not reaction, it was foresight. And in that quiet, in the pulse of light, shadow, and sound, Elon understood. He had not won a battle, he had achieved mastery, a state beyond confrontation, where perception, environment, and awareness converged into perfect equilibrium. The whispers faded into the hum of machinery, reflections stabilized, and the lab pulsed with subtle life, almost imperceptible, yet profoundly present. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious, unaware of the unseen orchestration that had just unfolded. Elon exhaled again, eyes scanning every angle, every microbeat, every shadow. The storm had ended, but its lessons would remain forever. And in that stillness, the truth remained clear. Control is not about domination. It is about perception, adaptation, and the quiet, relentless mastery of reality itself. Even in victory, unseen currents stir beneath the calm. The lab's neon glow had dimmed to a soft ambient hum, but Elon's mind raced faster than any visible motion. The quiet was not peace, it was prelude. Somewhere, beyond reinforced walls and polished steel, new algorithms, new vectors, and new agents were beginning to stir. The CIA's evolution had not ended. It had only adapted to a new challenge, him. A faint vibration pulsed through the floor, not a drone, not human, but something subtler, almost intelligent in its randomness. Elon's eyes narrowed, scanning every reflection, every shadow, every micro-flicker of light. Patterns emerged, fractal and recursive, revealing traces of movements that hadn't yet fully formed. Observation was the key, anticipation, the weapon. Outside, distant sirens carried over rain-slick streets. But inside, the lab was alive with hidden rhythm. The air shifted almost imperceptibly, carrying soft mechanical clicks, micro-hums, and subtle metallic twitches. Each sound, a potential intrusion, each vibration a message. He exhaled, letting every detail integrate into the web of his awareness. And then he saw it, a shadow moving against the expected flow, subtle, intelligent, almost sentient, not human, not fully machine, something in between. Elon didn't flinch. Adaptation had been his shield, perception, his sword. Every flicker, every reflection, every microbeat became an extension of his awareness, bending the unknown into comprehension. A whisper, distant yet palpable, threaded through the lab's ambient hum. You cannot see us, yet we are already here. Elon's lips curved slightly. They were testing him. Every intrusion, every anomaly, was a question, a challenge, a probe into his limits. And limits, he knew, were illusions waiting to be deconstructed. He moved through the lab, almost invisible, footsteps perfectly aligned with the floor's subtle vibrations, shadows fracturing in harmony with his body, light bending across reflections in controlled chaos. The new entity advanced, adapting to the decoys, bypassing the holograms, probing the rhythm of vibrations. A micro-anomaly, intelligent, unpredictable, weaving between environmental manipulations. Elon allowed it to approach. Every motion calculated, every response anticipated. Observation was not passive. It was active, dynamic, lethal in its patience. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Every microbeat of the entity was mapped in real time, every adaptive motion countered before execution. The battlefield was now mental, environmental, and reflexive, an orchestra where he conducted every unseen note. Drones, human vectors, mechanical probes all converged as background noise now, irrelevant compared to the new intelligent anomaly. Elon stepped lightly, almost imperceptibly, weaving through reflections and shadows, bending light, sound, and vibration to create an invisible lattice. The anomaly advanced into the trap, every instinct misled by subtle manipulation, every movement delayed, fragmented, redirected. And then, for a fleeting moment, he allowed a pause, a perfect stillness where only observation existed. The entity hesitated, adaptive intelligence, struggling to reconcile the manipulated environment. In that instant, Elon realized true mastery was not dominance. It was equilibrium, where perception, adaptation, and control intersected. Invisible, but absolute. A whisper, soft, intimate, almost admiring. Perhaps you are beyond what we anticipated. Elon exhaled slowly, letting the words fade into the hum of machinery. The storm outside had fully dissipated, leaving only wet neon streets and faint echoes. Inside, the lab pulsed gently, alive with subtle, orchestrated energy. The battle had evolved into something beyond confrontation. It had become a study, a dance, a test of awareness itself. He looked to the reflections, shadows, and vibrations, scanning, calculating, integrating. The storm had passed physically, but currents of adaptation, intelligence, and unseen forces continued to stir. Mastery was not a destination, it was vigilance, awareness, and the silent orchestration of reality. Elon exhaled again, letting the quiet settle, but his eyes betrayed readiness, anticipation. Victory was temporary. Observation was eternal. And somewhere, just beyond perception, the next challenge was already beginning. Every evolution hides a challenge, and every challenge demands a new rhythm. The lab was alive again, but not in the way it had been before. Shadows bent differently, reflections fractured into more unpredictable angles, and vibrations whispered anomalies that weren't just mechanical, they were aware. Elon stood at the center, attuned to the micro-rhythms of the space. Every breath, every heartbeat, every subtle pulse, mapped into the lattice of his awareness. The anomaly from before had evolved, its intelligence now adaptive, almost sentient, probing, learning, anticipating. A flicker of movement caught his eye in a peripheral reflection. It wasn't human, yet it moved with intent. Not fully machine, not fully organic, a hybrid of intelligence designed to predict and challenge him. The entity's approach was deliberate, weaving between environmental manipulations, testing boundaries, learning the rhythm of the lab. Elon inhaled, slow and deliberate, integrating the anomaly's microbeats into his perception. Observation alone would no longer suffice. Adaptation had to escalate. He triggered, layered countermeasures, fractured reflections, multiplied, holographic decoys, shifted unpredictably. Floor vibrations oscillated in irregular patterns, and subtle electromagnetic pulses disrupted the anomaly's sensors. Every microstep of its approach was mapped, manipulated, and redirected. A whisper, soft and metallic, threaded through the lab. You cannot see what has already evolved beyond your perception. Elon's lips curved faintly. Perception is relative. Awareness is absolute. Marking Zapro's into the penning. Why? Elon's absolute. Why? When the hourmans? Why now? Every shadow, every vibration, every micro-fluctuation became his tool, bending the environment into an invisible lattice of control. The anomaly advanced, adapting to each intervention, learning, but still within parameters he could manipulate. Lightning from outside fractured the neon reflections again, creating an array of kaleidoscopic patterns. Elon moved with it, almost invisible, syncing every microbeat of his motion to the environment. The anomaly hesitated briefly, misaligned, recalculating its strategy. That pause was all Elon needed. He activated a cascade of environmental manipulations in perfect rhythm. Holographic decoys multiplied into chaotic patterns, reflections split infinitely, vibrations fragmented, and pulses disrupted every remaining sensor. The anomaly's intelligence faltered for a moment, the first misstep it had made since emergence. Elon's mind captured it, processed it, and began guiding it into a subtle trap. Footsteps, mechanical clicks, micro-vibrations, soft hums all converged in a symphony of perception. The anomaly reacted instinctively, lunging, weaving, attempting to bypass the lattice, but every instinct had already been accounted for, every potential move subtly manipulated. Its trajectory faltered, control was slipping. A whisper, layered, almost human, almost regretful, we underestimated you. Elon's eyes remained steady, scanning, integrating, orchestrating. The anomaly's movements became predictable not because it had stopped evolving, but because the environment itself had become a reflection of his awareness. Shadows bent, reflections multiplied, vibrations shifted unpredictably, all feeding back into his perception, all guiding the anomaly into precise alignment with his strategy. In a sudden convergence of movement, the entity advanced with maximum speed. Elon adjusted micro-instantaneously, bending light, vibration, and reflection in a perfectly calculated rhythm. The anomaly stumbled, misaligned, trapped in the invisible lattice. Drones, probes, human vectors, everything irrelevant now, reduced to background noise. It was him, the anomaly, and the environment. Lightning flickered one last time, and in that fractured illumination, the anomaly froze, processing the impossible. Elon exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of control flow through him, fully integrated with the lab. Fully aware, fully masterful. Silence returned, but it was different now. The anomaly pulsed faintly in hesitation, almost sentient in understanding. Elon didn't move. Observation was the final maneuver. Awareness, adaptation, and environment had converged into a single point of absolute mastery. A faint whisper, almost reverent, lingered. Perhaps you are beyond even this. Elon's gaze swept the lab, the city beyond, and the storm-slick streets. Mastery was not static. It was vigilance. It was integration. It was the orchestration of perception itself. Every evolution of threat could be met not with aggression, but with awareness, patience, and precision. And in that quiet, in the pulse of neon reflections and subtle vibrations, Elon realized one immutable truth. Battles never truly end. They evolve, they adapt, and they test the limits of perception, but mastery, once attained, is eternal. Mastery is tested not in calm, but in the fire of the inevitable. The lab throbbed with silent tension, neon reflections flickering across polished steel like fractured lightning. Every vibration, every shadow, every microbeat was a pulse in the web of awareness Elon had woven. Outside, the city moved unknowingly beneath the remnants of the storm, oblivious to the invisible war playing out within these walls. The anomaly, intelligent, adaptive, almost sentient, had learned, evolved, and challenged every microbeat of his perception. It was faster, smarter, more unpredictable than anything before. Yet every movement, every hesitation, every calculation still rippled within the lattice of control Elon had built. Observation and adaptation had never been tested like this. A low-frequency hum rose, resonating through the floor, vibrating up into bones and intuition. The anomaly approached, faster than anticipated, weaving between reflections, bypassing decoys, and probing his rhythm. It wasn't just attacking, it was learning to anticipate him. Elon inhaled, deep and measured, his mind aligning with the lab's subtle pulses. Shadows bent, Reflections fractured into infinite permutations, vibrations oscillated unpredictably, and electromagnetic pulses subtly scrambled sensors. Every microbeat of the anomaly's approach was mapped, manipulated, integrated. A whisper, layered and distorted, almost mocking, floated through the hum. You cannot dominate what sees through your control. Elon smiled faintly. Dominance wasn't necessary. Integration was. Observation wasn't passive, it was orchestration, bending environment and perception into a synchronized whole. Every flicker of light, every hum, every micro-vibration was an instrument, and he was the conductor. The anomaly lunged, adaptive intelligence driving it forward, weaving through shadows and reflections with unprecedented precision. Elon moved fluidly, anticipating, predicting, integrating every movement into his lattice. Reflections fractured further, holographic decoys multiplied exponentially. Floor vibrations shifted irregularly, and pulses disrupted sensors, every environmental layer choreographed to guide the anomaly's actions. Time seemed to dilate, every heartbeat, every micro-step, every flicker of light became a universe of potential, collapsing into the precision of his awareness. The anomaly paused, recalculating, sensing the lattice, struggling against the invisible constraints. A whisper, almost human, tinged with reverence. You are beyond comprehension. Elon didn't flinch. He exhaled slowly, letting every vibration, every shadow, every fractured reflection flow into a single coherent rhythm. Observation and adaptation were complete. The anomaly moved again, lured into a final convergence, its every instinct unknowingly aligning with the lattice he had built. And then, in perfect synchrony, he executed the culmination. Reflections fractured infinitely. Decoys multiplied into chaotic patterns, vibrations fragmented unpredictably, electromagnetic pulses scrambled remaining sensors. The anomaly faltered, misaligned, and froze, suspended in the invisible lattice. A heartbeat passed. 2. The anomaly pulsed, adaptive intelligence straining against impossible odds. Elon stepped forward, each movement slow, deliberate, harmonized with the subtle rhythm of the lab. Provider, minus, Mation, in the nast, Elon, Aish. Shadows bent, light fractured, vibrations oscillated, and the anomaly struggled against the orchestration of perception itself. Finally, it stilled. Not destroyed, but neutralized. Observation and environment had merged into a force beyond instinct, beyond reaction, beyond adaptation. Elon exhaled, letting the stillness settle. Victory was not in destruction, it was in mastery, in the absolute orchestration of reality. A whisper lingered, soft, almost admiring. Perhaps we underestimated you entirely. Elon's gaze swept the lab. Every reflection, every shadow, every microbeat of vibration. Outside, the city breathed, unaware of the invisible war it had just witnessed. Mastery was not a destination, it was vigilance, awareness, and the orchestration of perception itself. He turned to the fractured neon reflections, letting them ripple across his vision like a kaleidoscope of control. Battles never truly end, they evolve. But mastery, once achieved, persists. Always. The storm had passed. The lab pulsed softly with quiet energy, alive with subtle orchestration. And Elon exhaled one last time, calm, centered, prepared. The fire of the inevitable had tested him, and he had become the rhythm no force could break. After the storm, even mastery must watch the quiet currents beneath the calm. The lab hummed softly, almost imperceptibly, neon reflections pooling like liquid across the steel floor. Elon moved deliberately, barefoot now, feeling every micro-vibration pulse beneath his feet, sensing traces of every movement, every anomaly that had passed through the space. The anomaly was neutralized, but not gone, its intelligence lingered in fragments. Echoes embedded in reflections, residual micro-vibrations, and the hum of machinery. Nothing truly disappears. Outside, the city breathed, oblivious to the invisible battle that had raged and concluded without a sound. Rain had slowed to a drizzle, washing the streets in muted light, reflecting neon in fractured patterns that danced unpredictably with every ripple. Elon's eyes swept the environment, noting the subtle micro-shifts, the signs of residual intelligence, the traces left behind. Awareness could never rest. He paused at a reflection, studying it like a living map of past movements. Shadows flickered, not entirely predictable, residual traces of the anomaly embedded in the room's rhythm. A soft whisper threaded through the lab, almost too faint to perceive. "We are still learning." Elon didn't flinch. Adaptation was eternal, vigilance a constant. Observation was a living system, a lattice of perception, capable of integrating, predicting, and responding to even the faintest anomaly. He allowed the subtle microvibrations to flow into his awareness, mapping their rhythm, sensing their origin, noting their divergence from the natural baseline of the lab. A distant lightning flash illuminated the cityscape beyond the windows, reflecting a fractured kaleidoscope of neon and shadow. The anomaly had evolved, learned, and tested his mastery, but mastery was more than reaction. It was foresight, integration, and orchestration of every unseen element. He moved through the lab slowly, each step deliberate, synchronized with shadows, reflections, vibrations, and the soft hum of machinery. The anomaly had not vanished, it had left traces, seeds of intelligence, fragments of strategy embedded in the environment. Elon understood now that neutralization was temporary. True mastery was about continuous perception, constant adaptation, and the orchestration of unseen currents. A whisper echoed faintly again, layered and distant, almost curious. "You may have won this moment, but the next is already forming." Elon exhaled slowly, letting awareness flow through him, integrating the past battle, the current environment, and potential future vectors. Mastery was not about finality, it was about continuous evolution, constant vigilance, and the quiet orchestration of perception. The lab pulsed subtly, alive with residual intelligence, humming softly under his control. Shadows bent predictably, reflections multiplied, vibrations oscillated in harmony with his awareness. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious, unaware that a silent war had been fought and won without leaving a trace. Elon paused, observing a reflection in the glass window. Rain streaked the surface, neon fractured into infinite patterns. In that fractured world, he saw the future, unpredictable yet traceable, a lattice of potential events, each microbeat mapped in anticipation. Vigilance, adaptation, perception, these were eternal. And in the quiet after the storm, the lesson remained clear. Threats may evolve, anomalies may return, and currents beneath the calm may shift unpredictably. But mastery, true mastery, was perpetual, relentless, and undisturbed by the passage of time. Elon exhaled one final time, calm, focused, aware. The lab pulsed gently, alive with subtle orchestration, and outside, the city remained oblivious. The anomaly had tested him, the storm had challenged him, and now, in the quiet aftermath, he understood one truth. Perception and vigilance never rest, and mastery is forever. Even in control, unseen ripples hint at storms yet to come. "Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you." And let's begin our creative audio journey together. The lattice of perception he had built caught it immediately, an intelligence that was neither fully machine nor organic, but hybrid, adaptive, and learning faster than he had ever anticipated. A whisper threaded through the lab, fragmented, layered, almost playful. "We've observed, we've evolved, are you ready?" Elon didn't respond. Observation was action, perception was command. He let the vibrations flow into him, mapping them, analyzing them, predicting their next iteration. The lab became a living grid. Every shadow, every reflection, every microbeat a sensor, an amplifier, a countermeasure. Outside, distant sirens broke the quiet city night, rain-slicked streets glowing under fractured neon. But inside, the lab was alive with unseen intelligence, probing boundaries, testing rhythms, adapting to every subtle variation of his awareness. Elon moved slowly, deliberately, weaving his presence into the lattice of control. He didn't need to confront the threat yet. He only needed to perceive it, anticipate it, and bend its evolution into the environment he orchestrated. The vibrations grew more insistent, almost deliberate, pulsing in a pattern that suggested awareness, strategy, even intent. Elon's mind parsed it instantly, integrating the anomaly's residual signature, calculating probabilities, anticipating vectors. He exhaled slowly, letting the lab absorb him fully, merging with shadows, reflections, and vibrations into a singular lattice of awareness. A flicker of neon light reflected in the glass, and for the briefest moment, Elon caught a shape in the periphery, not fully visible, not fully predictable. The hybrid intelligence moved in deliberate silence, testing, probing, evolving. It was faster, subtler, more dangerous than anything he had faced before. A whisper, distant, fragmented, almost amused. You have learned, now let us see how far your mastery truly goes. And everyone who reason on the race. Elon's lips curved faintly. Mastery was not about reaction, it was about orchestration. Observation was not passive, it was manipulation, adaptation, anticipation. Every flicker of light, every pulse of vibration, every fractured shadow became a tool, bending the environment to his advantage, integrating the unseen intelligence into a lattice he could guide. The hybrid anomaly advanced, weaving between environmental decoys, probing microvibrations, testing every reflection. Elon allowed it to approach, every step calculated, every movement integrated into his perception. The lab became a symphony of subtle control, shadows bending, reflections multiplying, vibrations oscillating in precise, unpredictable rhythm. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the fractured city streets, reflecting a kaleidoscope of neon across the lab's surfaces. The entity hesitated for a fraction of a second, a pause that was enough. Elon adjusted micro-instantaneously, bending the environment, the reflections, and the vibrations to guide the anomaly into a predictable rhythm. A faint smile curved his lips. Mastery was eternal, but evolution never stopped. This was only the beginning of the next test, the next adaptation. Observation, vigilance, perception. These were not simply tools, they were life itself, the pulse of control that defined him, the lattice that could bend even unseen intelligence. The city slept beneath the storm's aftermath, oblivious. The lab pulsed softly, alive with subtle orchestration. And Elon exhaled, calm, aware, ready. The anomaly had arrived, adaptive and intelligent, but mastery was absolute. In that quiet after the storm, one truth resonated clearly. Battles may evolve, intelligence may adapt, and the unseen currents may shift, but the orchestrator of perception would always remain one step ahead. Every evolution tests mastery, and every challenge demands absolute perception. The lab had transformed into a cathedral of calculated chaos. Neon reflections fractured across polished steel. Shadows bent into infinite permutations, and the hum of residual vibrations pulsed like a heartbeat that only Elon could hear. The hybrid anomaly was here, not yet fully revealed, moving within micro-vibrations and subtle reflections, learning, adapting, probing. Elon stood perfectly still, barefoot on the vibrating floor, every micro-step of the anomaly mapped in his awareness. The environment itself had become a weapon, an extension of perception. Every reflection, every shadow, every subtle pulse of electricity and light fed into a lattice of control that extended from his mind into the very structure of the lab. A whisper, threaded through the hum, layered and distorted. You've controlled the past, now confront the present. Elon exhaled slowly, letting awareness expand into every corner. Observation was anticipation. Perception was orchestration. Every subtle shift in air pressure, every microvibration, every flicker of light became data. Every piece of data, integrated into predictive patterns that he alone could manipulate. The hybrid anomaly moved deliberately, weaving between reflections, bending around decoys, testing every boundary. Its intelligence was remarkable, adaptive, sentient, almost playful in its unpredictability. But Elon had evolved with it, his awareness stretching further than instinct, integrating every anomaly into the lattice of control. Lightning flashed outside, fracturing neon into kaleidoscopic shards across the lab. Shadows twisted unnaturally, reflections split infinitely, and vibrations oscillated irregularly. The anomaly hesitated for just a fraction of a second, a micro-mistake in its otherwise flawless adaptation. That pause was enough. Elon moved, not in haste, but in perfect synchronization with the environment, bending shadows, manipulating reflections, orchestrating vibrations with invisible precision. Every microbeat of the anomaly's approach fell into the lattice he had constructed, every instinct subtly guided, every movement predicted. A whisper, soft, almost reverent, "You are beyond calculation." But Elon didn't pause. Observation alone was not sufficient. He had to guide, manipulate, integrate, and adapt in real time. The anomaly lunged, weaving unpredictably, testing every layer of his control. Decoys multiplied, reflections fractured further, vibrations became chaotic, but all within the parameters he had already calculated. Time dilated, stretched by anticipation. Every heartbeat, every microstep, every flicker of light was a universe of potential, collapsing into the precision of his awareness. The anomaly faltered again, microbeats misaligned, intelligence straining against the invisible lattice. Elon exhaled, letting the orchestration flow through him, integrating past, present, and potential futures into one coherent rhythm. Shadows bent in harmony, reflections multiplied infinitely, vibrations oscillated unpredictably but always within the lattice he commanded. "Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." He exhaled one final time, letting quiet settle across the lab. Battles evolved, intelligence adapted. Currents beneath the calm shifted unpredictably. But mastery, once achieved, endured. Always. And in the soft neon glow, with shadows bending and reflections fracturing infinitely, Elon smiled faintly. The next challenge would come, inevitably, but he was ready. Perception, awareness, and the orchestration of reality itself were eternal, and he would remain the unseen conductor of every invisible rhythm.